Hello, everyone, and good evening. So, thank you for joining us tonight. Back again with Bhante Suddhāso, who will be sharing a little bit about the recollection of peace. Before that, though, he will guide us in some meditation. So, settle in. Welcome so far to Gita, Ron, Elaine, and Kao's our friend. So good to see everyone. And welcome also to those of you who are just viewing right now. So at this time, I'll pass things over to Bante, who will lead us in some meditation.
So you can get in your meditation position, taking a moment to make sure that your posture is even and balanced and that there's no pressure on your upper thighs or tailbone, which might put your legs to sleep. So making sure your spine is nice and straight and also relaxed. The head is not tilted back or too far forward. Take a few long, slow, deep breaths, with each out breath, letting the body relax. Paying particular attention to relaxing the forehead, eyes, and the jaw. Once you're settled into position, make a determination to let the body be still. There's nothing that needs to be done. So we can let go of the impulse to act, the impulse to think, the impulse to react, and enjoy the peacefulness of doing nothing. And to fully enjoy this peacefulness requires full attention. So, paying full attention to the joy of not doing anything with body or mind. And as the moments go by, you can feel the body sinking deeper and deeper into stability, immovability. And feeling how peaceful it is, how serene, calm, soothing it is to let the body be still and motionless. And there's nothing we need to do with the mind. We don't need to plan anything. We don't need to analyze anything. We don't need to remember anything. We don't need to think about anything. We don't need to figure anything out. And we don't need to focus on anything in particular. We can let the mind rest while maintaining fully, clearly aware of the peacefulness of that resting state. So, feeling the peacefulness of a motionless mind, the peacefulness of a mind that has nothing it needs to do. And if you catch yourself getting caught up in agitation, restlessness, movement of mind, movement of body, just bring your attention back to peacefulness, recollecting the peacefulness of a motionless body, emotionless mind. The peacefulness of alert inactivity. And as one settles deeper and deeper into stillness, pay attention to the peacefulness of this condition, to the feeling of serenity, spaciousness in the mind. And whatever sensations appear, whether sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, or thought, notice the peacefulness of not reacting, the peacefulness of not falling into desire or aversion, the peacefulness of a balanced, equanimous mind. basking in the peacefulness of freedom from activity, freedom from preference, freedom from reactivity. And the peacefulness of not needing to be anyone in particular, not needing to present a personality, not needing to maintain our mask, not needing to fill any role. The peacefulness of not needing to be anyone in particular. So when you're ready, you can slowly shift your body. Coming out of meditation.
So thank you, Bhante, for guiding us in that lovely meditation. And welcome to Lilia and Shadow of Label for joining in. And welcome to some more friends who have started watching. So at this time, Bhante will be sharing some words of Dhamma. And if you have questions, feel free to type them into the live chat and we'll address them at the end of the talk. So I'll turn things over to Bhante Suddhāso.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. So this evening, I'm scheduled to speak a bit about recollection of peace. So what in Pali is called upasamānussati. So anusati means the recollection of something, and upasama means peacefulness or peace. And this is mentioned a couple of places in the suttas as a meditation practice, which can be done. But in neither of those places does the Buddha explain what it is or how to do it. In my case, when I hear recollection of peace, there's two different things that come to mind from the suttas. One is a short statement that we find many places in the suttas, which in Pali goes something like etang santang etang panitang yaridang sabbasankara samato sabu patipatinissa tanhan karo virago nirodo nibbana. Which, if you know Pali, this is incredibly beautiful. It's a very succinct description of the goal of Buddhist practice. And roughly what it's saying is it's saying this is peaceful, this is sublime, that is the pacification of all phenomena, the relinquishment of all acquisition, the elimination of all craving, dispassion, cessation, nibbana. And the reason that comes to mind for me is that it's actually pointing at the peacefulness of mind which comes when we do our practice. It actually starts off by saying, this is peaceful. Etang santam, this is peaceful. This is peace. And the very first item that's listed, sabbasankara samato. So samatha, again, also comes from the same root as upasama, the same root as santa, all of which mean peace or peacefulness. So samatha literally means peacefulness. So bringing peacefulness to all sankharas, pacifying all sankharas. And sankhara can be translated a number of different ways. The most general purpose translation would be simply phenomena, conditional phenomena. It's also sometimes used to mean mental constructs in particular, though technically everything is a mental construct, including what we think of as physical phenomena. Those are technically also mental constructs. So it winds up meaning the same thing. Whether you say mental constructs or conditional phenomena or simply things, it all winds up having the same meaning. So bringing all mental constructs to peacefulness, to stillness. So bringing peacefulness to all our mental activities. And similarly, the next line of this statement, sabu patipatinissa go. So that's the relinquishment of all acquisition. So letting go of whatever we're holding on to. So letting go of our attachment to things, physical things, and mental things as well. So this is something which, to me, comes immediately to mind when I think of peacefulness. When I think of bringing to mind peace, what comes to mind to me is letting go of all sankharas, letting go of all mental constructs, letting go of all mental activities, letting go of all phenomena. So not trying to maintain any particular experience. What does it mean to let go of all sankharas? Well, the first question is, what are sankharas? Sight is a sankhara. Seeing is a sankhara. Sound is a sankhara. Hearing is a sankhara. Smell is a sankhara. Smelling is a sankhara. And so on. Thought is a sankhara. Thinking is a sankhara. So letting all of that come to peace, letting all of it settle out, letting all of it fade away, not forcing it to go away, but allowing it to fade. So this is a meditation practice which gets us in touch with the peacefulness of the unconditioned, which is what the Buddha is pointing to with this statement. He's pointing to the peacefulness of the unconditioned, the peacefulness of that which is not a thing, that which is not defined in terms of things, that which is beyond thingness, which is not affected by the imposition of the appearance of separate objects. And when we allow ourselves to get in touch with that experience of the unconditioned, the unformed, the unshaped, the unconcocted, the undesigned, the undivided, then it's a tremendous weight off of our shoulders. We realize that we've been quite literally carrying around the world with us everywhere we go. This world of me seeing those things, me hearing those things, me thinking those things. It's a world that we build, a world of mental constructs, and it weighs us down. And it takes so much effort to maintain, so much activity, so much struggle. And we're trying to maintain it in a specific way, a way which matches our internal views of what we think the world is, and in a way that matches our internal views of who we think we are, what we think we are. So it's such a struggle, it's such a burden, but it's a struggle that we're so habituated to that we don't even recognize there's another option. It's a burden which is backbreaking. Yet we so often seem unaware that there's any other option. So recollection of peace is bringing to mind that there actually is something else besides the experience of our habitual sankharas. There actually is another experience that can be had. There is such a thing as a peacefulness beyond activity, a peacefulness not affected by activity, a peacefulness in which activity dissolves and disappears. So bringing to mind that there is such a thing, then we can point the mind towards it. We can lean the mind towards that peacefulness, the peacefulness of non-sankhara, the peacefulness of non-thing, the peacefulness of non-activity, the peacefulness of non-me, of non-other, of non-world. The peacefulness of not needing to continually reify the experience that we believe we're supposed to be having. And of course, if you've never had any experience of this kind of peacefulness, then it's awfully hard to recollect it. When we hear the word recollection, we normally think of memory, remembering something that's happened in the past. So if you haven't ever experienced the peacefulness of the unconditioned, then it's awfully hard to remember it, isn't it? Fortunately, the Pali word anussati doesn't just mean recollection or memory. It actually contains within it the word sati, which we more normally translate as mindfulness. So anu means together or along or following or in accordance with, and sati means mindfulness. So anussati can mean recollection in the sense of bringing to mind something from the past. But anussati can also mean tracking something with mindfulness, mindfully pointing one's attention to accord with something. So that can also be the case, whether we remember the peacefulness beyond sankharas or not. We can still practice it as an anussati, and that we can direct our mindfulness towards it. We can direct our attention towards peace. So, and in the meditation practice, you might have noticed that this started with a very simple form of peace, which is the peacefulness of not moving your body. Often this is one of the best places to start because it's so simple and tangible. It's not very subtle at all. When we talk about the peacefulness beyond all sankharas, then that might sound a little bit unattainable, a little bit distant, a little bit mystical. But when we talk about the peacefulness of not needing to move your body, it's like, oh, okay, I get that. I understand what that is. But the important thing is actually pointing your mind towards it. Actually pointing your mind towards the experience of a still body, a motionless body. Point your mind towards the experience of not needing to move your body. This is actually such a simple gift that we give ourselves every time we sit down to do some meditation, which is that for a period of time, we're giving ourselves permission to not do anything with our bodies. We don't need to hold any activity. We don't need to maintain any activity. We can let go of all physical activities. The body will take care of itself. We just put it in position and let it sit there. And notice how peaceful it is that you don't need to do anything with your body for a few minutes. Then you start to get a sense as to what that peacefulness feels like. So that's actually your first taste of the peacefulness of pacifying all sankharas and relinquishing all acquisitions. That first taste of it is when we allow the body sankhara to settle down. We allow activities of body to settle down. Not pushing the body around, not dragging the body around, not trying to make it do anything in particular, but just letting it sit still for a few minutes and start to get a sense of peace. The peacefulness of freedom from physical sankharas. And as we settle into that peacefulness of no body movement, Then we can settle into the peacefulness of no mind movement, of allowing our normal thinking, reacting, responding, planning, dreaming, all that mental activity, allowing all of that to come to an end. We don't need to further it. We don't need to repeat it. We don't need to reify it. We don't need to maintain it. We can let it come to an end. It's so peaceful to know that we don't need to do any of those things we've been doing with our mind. I've been thinking about a number of things today. Well, for the past few minutes, I didn't have to think about them. That was so lovely. There's some plans that need to be made, but for the last few minutes, I didn't have to make those plans. It was so lovely, so peaceful. We start to get a taste of the peacefulness of not needing to do anything in particular with the mind, not needing to perpetuate any particular mental activity, not needing to perpetuate any mental construct, not needing to protect any experience of mind, not needing to hold on to any perception or thought or memory. So peaceful, so serene, so calm, blissful, sublime. Remember, the Buddha says, etang santang etang panitam. This is peaceful, this is sublime. Actually, the word panita can also mean delicious. In the suttas, it's often used to refer to food, like really delicious food. So this is delicious, not needing to do anything with body and mind, not furthering any activity of body or mind, not protecting any acquisition of body and mind. Delicious. And we also start to realize then that whoever we think we are is just a series of activities. We think, well, I am the talkative one. No, that's not true. Talking is just an activity we do sometimes. I am the one who speaks indirectly. Well, that's not true. Speaking indirectly is just an activity you do sometimes. I am the rude one. Well, no, rudeness is just something you do sometimes. Those are all just activities. They're not personality traits. They're personality activities. We don't have personality traits. We have personality activities. Isn't that interesting? I am not a rude person. However, activities of rudeness are sometimes engaged in. Changes the character of the statement quite dramatically. So we can let those activities come to an end. For a period of time, we don't need to be any personality. We don't need to perpetuate any activities of personality. We don't need to do any personality actions. Isn't that lovely? I don't need to be anyone. I don't need to be the sharp one or the clever one or the witty one. I don't need to be the funny one. I don't need to be the grumpy one. I don't need to be the shy one. I don't need to be the weird one. I don't need to be whatever it is I think I am. Because I don't need to think I am anything in particular. I don't need to think I am anything at all, in fact. Isn't that lovely? We can put down who we think we are entirely. Let go of all those sankharas, all those activities, all those constructs. And nobody says you have to pick them up again, by the way. There's no requirement. At the end of a meditation, you can be a completely different person because you weren't any person in the first place. You just choose to pick up a different set of activities, to perform a different set of personality actions. You don't need to keep the personality actions that you have memories of. You don't need to repeat those. So then we're starting to put down what we think of as me. Even perceptions, ways we see the world. We can put that down as well. That's just another set of activities, another set of sankharas that we can allow to end. We can allow to come to stillness. And in letting them come to stillness, we realize that perpetuating them was a whole lot of work, a whole lot of unnecessary work, just making ourselves miserable for no reason. And it's so peaceful when we stop. And we start to open up to the vast spaciousness that lies behind, within, and around all sankharas. The vast spaciousness which is not definable in terms of sankharas, which cannot be defined in terms of actions or objects. It's always been here. It's never been anywhere else. It's just a matter of paying attention to it. It's just a matter of dropping our obsession with the activities and objects so that we can see what lies behind them, beneath them, and around them. When I was a kid, there were these popular books. I think they were called Magic Eye books. And it would have this image which looked like a bunch of meaningless geometric scramble. And if you just look at it, then that's all you'll see. You'll just see this meaningless, scrambled nonsense image. Doesn't look like anything at all. But if you stop looking at the image on the page, you let your eyes relax. You start looking around it and through it to see what's behind it. Then a 3D image will come into view. So it's a bit like that. When we stop looking at the objects and activities that we're used to fixating on, when we stop reifying them, perpetuating them, then our mind can open up into this vast three-dimensional space in which there are no specific set objects. There are no ongoing activities. What there is vastness, spaciousness, freedom, limitlessness, a deep sense of peacefulness, a deep sense of serenity, and a wordless bliss. And what usually happens with our practice is we dip into this a little bit, and then we pull back into the world of objects and activities that we're used to. And it's painful, and it hurts, and we don't like it, but it's what we're used to. So there's something oddly comfortable about it. Something oddly comfortable about the pain and the misery. Kind of like if you have a jacket that you haven't washed in a few years and it stinks and it's kind of scratchy and uncomfortable, but there's something oddly comfortable about it because it's familiar. That's a little bit what samsara is like. So we slip back in the world of objects and activities, and it's uncomfortable and stinky and awkward, but it's familiar. But at some point we remember, it's like, oh, but there is that peacefulness beyond all this. And we go a little bit deeper this time. We let go of a little bit more of our sankharas. Even just for a moment, we start to see the peacefulness that's possible when we let go of these constructs and activities. When we let go of the meing and the mining, we let go of that constant perpetuation of self-identity, even just a little bit, start to see the peacefulness that brings. And then we pull back out again and realize that we never went that deep in the first place. Like dipping a toe in the water. You dip in a foot, and you dip in an ankle, up to your knees. Starting to let ourselves get deeper and deeper into that peacefulness beyond conditions, peacefulness beyond objects, beyond activities, that peacefulness beyond me and mine, the peacefulness beyond self and other. And always holding it in mind, even as we go throughout our day, engaging in the various things we need to do. Can always keep in mind that awareness that there is that which is beyond sankharas, and it's right here, it's right now. Whether you're baking bread or eating lunch or taking a shower or sweeping the floor, reading a book, listening to a talk, watching a movie, we can constantly remind ourselves there is a peacefulness beyond sankharas. There is a peacefulness in the relinquishment of all activities, the relinquishment of all perceptions, the relinquishment of all identities, the relinquishment of all personality, the relinquishment of the sense of self, the relinquishment of the illusion of separate objects. There is that peacefulness, and it is nowhere other than here and now. When we choose to pay attention to it, there it is. So I think that's all I really have to say on the subject. I think I've spoken more than enough. So I think I'll go ahead and leave it there. If there's any questions or comments, this is your opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante, for sharing. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And welcome to a couple more friends joining, Gita Ratnayake, as well as Andre and Tran. So yes, if there are any questions, feel free to type them in and we'll get to them shortly. There is a question on Facebook from Canute, I believe. So he says, who are we without activities? The idea that we could put down our activities is both liberating and anxiety provoking.
You are not anyone. But you started to figure out that we identify ourselves in terms of our activities, which is why we suffer so much. So you are not your activities. Activities are just things that happen sometimes, but they don't define you. They are not you. And so relax into the peacefulness of not needing to keep up those activities. Relax into the peacefulness of knowing that you are not restricted by those activities. You are not defined by those activities. And notice how peaceful that is. Notice how lovely that feels. You already get a taste of it every time you do some meditation. It's just a matter of drawing attention to it. The peacefulness of not perpetuating the activities that we think define us. It's already there. You just need to draw attention to it. Okay?
And Tran says, I already feel lighter when I don't need to think I'm this or that. I wonder why we keep forgetting to remind ourselves to do that more often.
Bad habits. It's really what it comes down to. We've spent countless lifetimes building up really bad habits of mind, habits of self-identity, habits of attachment, habits of desire, habits of delusion, habits of daydreaming, habits of spaciness. These habits are extremely strong. So, one of the ways of looking at Buddhist practice is that we're developing new habits, wholesome habits, habits of relinquishment, habits of non attachment, habits of non identity, and the habit of recollecting peace. So, of course, your old habits are going to be a lot stronger. You spent a lot more time developing them. Hundreds of lifetimes, thousands of lifetimes, millions of lifetimes. You spent a long time on those habits. We haven't spent much time on developing the habit of recollecting peace. We haven't spent much time on the habit of perceiving impermanence. We haven't spent much time on the habit of recollecting the possibility of awakening. We haven't spent much time paying attention to the blissfulness of letting go. So as we build those habits, then they gain strength and it gets easier. And our old bad habits become weaker. They start to lose their strength. Yeah, keep at it. It takes time. It takes practice. Keep at it.
And Kowser friend asks, when pain or discomfort arises in meditation, what can we do or not do? I find it hard to remain non-reactive with some sensations.
You kind of have to make a judgment call. If the pain is beyond your limit to endure, then endure a little bit longer than you think you can. But when I say endure, I don't mean gritting your teeth and like, oh, I hate this, but I will stay with it. But rather, it's like, can I see this with a mind of peace? Can I accept that this too is part of reality? Can I accept that this is inescapable and that's okay? Can I see it and feel it without hating it, even for a moment? And then once you've pushed yourself a bit beyond your limit, then go ahead and adjust your posture to alleviate the pain. And next time, stay with it a bit longer. So again, it's about pushing our limits. But you don't need to push way beyond what you're used to, but just keep pushing a little bit beyond. So, what we're trying to do with pain is to see that pain is just sensation. It's not inherently unpleasant, it's just sensation, it's just information. That's all. When you cultivate that attitude, then you'll actually realize that you can sit still for hours because all that's coming is just information, sensations. That's all. None of it is pain unless we choose to react negatively to it. Pain is not in the body. Pain is in the mind. It's in our reactions to the body. When one's practice is well cultivated, you can enter samadhi where pain doesn't arise in the first place, because one is not engaging in the activity of creating pain. So pain is something that does need to be investigated and understood, and the only way to do that is to look closely at it when it arises. And to see that the body sensation is one thing, and the pain is a response that we do with our mind, which we don't need to do. It's an activity that we do not need to do. But this can only be understood through directly looking at the experience of pain. So have a look when it arises. Have a look. And when it gets to be too much for you, stay with it a little longer and then stop. And then start up again. Repeat, repeat, repeat. And eventually you'll understand what pain is, and it won't be a problem for you anymore. Okay?
And Gita Ratnayake asks, is self-effacement similar to dispassion? Is it correct to say that this leads to humility?
If by self effacement you mean the Pali word saleka, I actually am of the opinion that saleka should be just translated as humility. I always found the translation self effacement to feel a little bit awkward, kind of like it's missing the point. Um, so I think humility is a much more accurate translation. So humility is just an acknowledgement of the way things are, without bringing in a sense of superiority or inferiority, without bringing in a sense of self identity. Okay.
And Tran says, you mentioned that we should not identify ourselves with activities, but what if others identify us with the activities? What should we do?
Well, that's their problem. It's not your problem. It's not your job to try to correct other people's misunderstandings. But sometimes you can point these things out, like, well, that's not who I am. That's just an activity that I've done in the past. But it's subject to change like everything else. You might try pointing that out if it's relevant. It's actually quite odd sometimes interacting with other people, especially if they're not Buddhist practitioners, because often they're relating to us as we were. This is really clear with family, by the way. When I'm with my family, they normally relate to me as I was 15 years ago. And in their mind, I'm the same person that I was 15 years ago. And the fact that I'm a dramatically different person is pretty much lost on them. Unless I say or do something which is radically different from their internal image of who I was 15 years ago. That might shake them up a little bit. But usually pretty quickly they go back into believing that I am who I was. It's a little bit easier with dedicated Buddhist practitioners because with Buddhist practice, we start to get a sense that people are fluid, identities are fluid, personalities are fluid. And we also get a sense of meeting somebody as they are in this moment. So I might have memories of what Drew used to be like or what Margaret used to be like, but that's meaningless because that's not who they are. So we're trying to always meet people as they are in this moment. So also bringing that to your interactions with others, meeting them as they are in this moment. Instead of going on the stories we have of what they used to be like or what we think they used to be like. And sometimes you can point that out to other people as well. You can be like, oh, you're reacting to the person I used to be. You're responding to me based upon how you think I am, based upon what you think I used to be. Oh, interesting. Because that person doesn't exist anymore. In other words, the person is just reacting to a figment of their own imagination, a Tran who used to exist but doesn't exist anymore. And actually, realistically, even the person that they think you used to be is probably inaccurate. They probably never had an accurate perception of you even in the past, let alone in the present. So sometimes you just have to laugh and let it be what it is. People like to live in their little dream worlds. That's their choice. But sometimes it is good to point out to them that their perception of you is not accurate. It's just based on their distorted memories. It's not a reflection of who you are in this moment. Okay?
And that was the last question of the night. Lots of thank yous from Tran. Andre is Stith is particularly wowed by your responses. Lots of emojis, especially when you said that's their problem. So thanks everyone for joining us. Unless there's any other questions, we can end for the night.
So we'll end with 3 sadhus.
Sadhu,
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.